Thank you so much. I'm not sure which microphone to use. Good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to be here. I've spent the last decade or so advocating the Garden City idea to people who are not persuaded. So it's fantastic to be here in a room full of people who are enthused about it. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes maximum talking you through the story of the Garden City movement. It's quite a UK, England-centric bit of the story, because we'll be hearing that international story, but also some of the work that the TCPA has been doing to really get back to the roots of the Garden City idea and what they mean for dealing with contemporary issues. So for those of you who don't know who the TCPA are, we were founded in 1899, a year after the original version of Howard's book. We were founded by Ebenezer Howard and his supporters to make the Garden City idea a reality. It's our 125th anniversary this year, and we are still a campaigning charity advocating and campaigning for homes and places in which everyone can thrive. And we do that through a number of work streams, not just about garden cities and new towns and new settlements, but all of those elements which make thriving places in relation to green infrastructure, healthy placemaking, rather enthusiastic presentation, climate change and community participation and social justice. And all of these things together for us are the foundations of the Garden City movement. Now, we've already had a fantastic explanation of the history, so I won't go over that any further, but these ideas still continue to underpin all of the work that we do in relation to creating thriving places. And these points that really set the Garden City idea apart, about sharing that uplift in land value to manage and sustain places in the long term, about putting people at the heart of creating and managing places, and embedding quality and innovation. Quite often, particularly in the UK, people think of garden cities as an old-fashioned idea, and we always try and reiterate it was about innovation, about what we need to happen today. Now, as we've already heard, Howard and his enthusiasts were practical idealists, and after purchasing the land for the first garden city at Letchworth, there was then a second at Welwyn Garden City, in between the wars, and then that also led, so after preceding the Second World War, at the end of the Second World War, there was some frustration within the Garden Cities Association at the time that the Garden City experiments were a bit slow, and they were fantastic ideas, but they really weren't going to meet the housing needs of England, and so that led to Frederick Osborne in the TCPA really leading a campaign for post-war new towns in which the government would play an enabling role in the delivery of new settlements. Now, the New Towns programme led to the delivery of 32 new towns across the United Kingdom, which today provide homes for over 2.8 million people. And they weren't just about building homes, they were about building balanced communities. So the development corporations, it's a very different model to the Garden City really, which were private sector led on a charity basis, run by the community. The New Towns programme was really enabled by government, and the development corporations had all the necessary powers and resources to deliver the new settlements, with arts and jobs and social facilities, community facilities, really at the heart of that programme as well. Now, the New Towns programme in England came to an end in the 1980s under the Thatcher government. There was quite a dramatic wind-up of the New Towns programme. All of the assets were sold off to the private sector or given to local authorities in balancing agreements, with no requirements for the long-term stewardship of those places, which was a fundamental aspect of the Garden City idea and a key failure of the programme. And since then, there have been a few attempts to revisit that new settlement agenda. We've had some attempts by the private sector. This is a place called South Woodham Ferrers in England. At the turn of the millennium, we had an initiative called Millennium Communities, which were designed to be highly sustainable new urban neighbourhoods. And then we had, the last Labour government had a campaign for eco-towns, which was for a generation of new settlements with the really, really high environmental standards and stewardship standards. It was a great initiative, but was vulnerable to the fact that we work on short political cycles, and there was no requirement to get public consent or any public engagement in these eco-towns. So there were huge protests locally to lots of them. So when we had a general election and a change of government, the government decided to abandon that idea. But the need for new settlements didn't disappear. We have a huge chronic housing crisis in England at the moment. We have an annual need for 300,000 new homes a year. There's about half of that being built at the moment. There's a huge also issue with quality. Over 3 million homes have been found to be unfit for human habitation in England. The kind of places that are being permitted at the moment in England to raise housing numbers include some of these places at the top. So on the very right-hand side, this is some of the sort of quality you can see from volume house builders. This is actually a real example of a place. There's no front door facing there's no garden. There's one small front door and it overlooks a car park. And you can see the design quality is nowhere near the aspirational design that it could be. But more worrying than that is the process of deregulation of planning. And so it's possible now to convert an office block into housing without needing planning permission. And that is a way for government to up the housing numbers. It can say it's delivering lots of housing numbers, but without any of the quality or facilities we need to make them healthy places. So these are actually industrial units on these are former factories or office blocks on industrial units in former new towns, which have been actually converted to housing now. So children playing in car parks, really, really substandard housing. These are the slums of the future. And we know it can be different. This is social housing in Letchworth. It wouldn't look like that today, but that has remained social housing for over 120 years. So TCPA has continued to make the case for new settlements. Please excuse my cold, by the way. And we make that case on three bases, on the basis of 3 points. Firstly, about housing need. So we know we can't meet our housing need on a plot-by-plot basis alone. So people always think about Howard in terms of new settlements. One of the cases for new garden cities was that it would enable the regeneration of our existing towns and cities, and that is still really, really important today. Secondly, the holistic approach to creating a new settlement based on garden city principles enables you to embed the highest environmental and quality standards based on the economies of scale and the types of technologies you can use, and if you plan strategically for them, making sure they are in sustainable locations. And thirdly, in terms of management and consent, we know that new settlements provide, again, those economies of scale, but the opportunities for land value capture, which are good for economy, society, and growth. And as part of our campaign, we have articulated those elements of the Garden City idea which have made it successful over time. Now, these Garden City principles, it's originally a list of 9 principles. This is a new way we have of displaying them. Now, you would recognise these principles as the elements of any sustainable place. So making sure it's genuinely affordable, that it's climate resilient, that there's access to nature, that it's landscape-led. All of these things have become so embedded in good practice in urban design that we take them for granted almost. But what sets the Garden City idea apart from others is this point about equity. So that's sharing land value for community benefit. That's strong vision leadership and community participation. And that community ownership of land and long-term stewardship of assets. Now, this isn't a blueprint for places. This is a framework for good urbanism that should be applied, as we saw in the video, would be applied differently in different places depending on the context. Now, in England, to try and actually understand how to make this happen, we've spent a lot of time looking back at the delivery of the original garden cities, of the delivery of the post-war new towns, and of the experiences by the private sector and others since to build new communities. And we're really clear that there is a lot to learn, lessons good and bad from that practice to work out how to go forward. And we've got lots of publications on our website if you want to understand a bit more about that detail. But we want to make sure we are covering a bit of a broader range today. But the ideas are there, we just need the political will to make it a reality. And it's not just the TCPA that has been supporting the Garden City idea in the last 10 years, we've had some real momentum politically, enthusiasm for the term Garden City anyway. We had government, the coalition government committing to a new generation of garden cities. That didn't really happen, but what they did do is support a programme of garden communities, which are new developments at a range of scales which have to meet a certain set of criteria. They're basically a bit weaker than the Garden City principles, but they're a movement in the right direction. We also have over 16 adopted local plans which have made a commitment to Garden City principles. And government's been fiddling around with some of the new towns regulations to understand how to make it fit for purpose. But they have still lacked the ambition to actually commit to the high standards necessary to build truly sustainable places. And as a result, the market has taken over and we are seeing some really, really poor quality development happening in England. Meanwhile, the local authorities are trying to get on with the story. So we run something called the New Communities Group, which is a network of 29 local authorities that are building new communities. Some of these were part of the original Eco Towns programme. Some of them have come to the New Community opportunity a bit later. But together they're delivering over 300,000 new homes. So if you're interested in understanding what authorities in the UK are doing in terms of new settlements, this is a great group and we can share the details with you. And we've been providing a whole suite of guidance on how to meet the Garden City principles today. Everything from how to make a climate resilient garden city to edible garden cities and thinking about modern methods of construction as well. And the idea of new garden cities and new towns is not going away. We have a general election in England in 1 month's time. And we have, this is from the party conferences back in 2023. The three main political parties, we have the Liberal Democrats committing to 10 new garden cities if they get into power. The current government is still convinced that deregulation is the way forward, so they're going to deliver, they say, 1 million new homes, but they're not so interested in new settlements. And the Labour Party, who are currently topping the polls, have committed to a new generation of new towns, drawing on some of the lessons that the TCPA has been promoting. So we'll see in a month's time what happens in relation to that. In the meantime, we have set out in a white paper the practical steps government needs to take to actually make these ideas a reality, a new generation of garden cities. And that is really shifting the focus from planning reform and consents and numbers to actually delivery mechanisms to make it happen. So if you're interested in the detail, that's available on our website. Now, it is our 125th anniversary, and you can see it's been fantastic that there has been some interest in the Garden City idea and the modern interpretation of the Garden City idea, but we have failed to get back to that scale of ambition that we were here 100 years ago talking about. And so 3 years ago, to mark our 125th anniversary this year, the TCPA launched a project called Tomorrow 125, which really sought to get back to the roots of the Garden City idea and answer that question that Howard and his supporters were trying to answer, which is how do we want to live? Particularly post-COVID, in the context of the climate emergency, there's been huge debates about how we're going to live as a society, how we're going to live together, movement patterns and the climate emergency. So we wanted to understand how the Garden City idea could help with answering that questions and contribute to that debate. So we had a 3-year project looking to rediscover the roots of the Garden City idea. We wanted to reinvigorate it as a framework for social transformation. So particularly in England, the Garden City concept has got a really bad reputation. So apart from those that understand the idea, it's been used, the term garden has been put in front of any kind of development to sell homes, essentially. Any kind of development that has tree-lined streets, you can call it garden community, you can call it whatever you want, it sells homes. And as a result, there's been a real departure between actually what the meaning of the Garden City idea is and what it is in the public's mind. So we really wanted to rebuild trust again in that Garden City brand and really put it back in the focus of the debate about progressive futures. Sorry, there's so many words on this slide. I won't go through this. I'm really sorry. But the first thing we did is we looked back at Howard's books. We looked back at Kropotkin. We looked back at those thinkers that had influenced the Garden City pioneers at the time and identified that the Garden City idea isn't about architecture. It's about social transformation and about enabling flourishing lives. And there are three foundations for that. One is that humans are part of nature. That was really important to Howard and the Garden City pioneers. So that restoration of nature and long-term sustainability of the planet is an essential pillar. Secondly, that human thriving depends on a meaningful and vibrant democracy, so making sure that people have a real say on the decisions that affect them, the role of national government as an enabler, but of local community action as the driver. And thirdly, that human thriving and a vibrant democracy require an evolution of our current economy. It was an economic model set out in that Garden City idea, looking at mutualised approaches to providing everything from energy to transport to create social value, which was then retained in the new Garden City. But what was unique as well about the Garden City idea was what we call the Garden City weave, and the fact that these were all woven together in the creation of new places, and it was about the lens of place. So we had a whole range of activities, which I won't go through now because I don't have time, but we produced a Mythbuster, which took head on some of those myths around the Garden City idea. So people saying it's all about low-density suburban sprawl, which is what many people think, and actually we know it's the antithesis of that. It's actually, how do you say, when should a place stop expanding and when should you create a new one? As well about issues around climate change, and we'll come back to the video about that as well. But we went out and we talked to people about it. We created a words and music presentation about the Garden City idea, which we performed at Glastonbury Festival. We commissioned poetry about garden cities, and we went around across the UK talking to communities that were trying to drive change. And as we are here talking about groups of men sitting together talking about garden cities, as there were many years ago, we also held something called the Bourneville Symposium. So in 1901, this was after the Garden Cities Association had been founded, Howard and the Garden City pioneers got together, a group of people in Bourneville in 1901. There they are, all sat together again, lots of gentlemen. There are some women in that one, though, actually. To actually say, and at this meeting, it wasn't just planners didn't really exist then, but it wasn't just social transformers and urbanists and others. There were landowners, there were financiers, there were people that actually wanted to get people together and say, okay, well, how are we going to build one of these garden cities? Let's get the money together. And it was a really important way of getting the money together to buy the land for Letchworth Garden City a year later. So we did the same. We got together a big group of planners, of community groups, of politicians, and we had a day without laptops, without phones, to actually talk about the roots of the Garden City idea and how to make those foundational principles a reality today. And I'll talk about the outcome of that in just a sec. But in terms of, we've got just a 2-minute video and then I've got one more slide. In terms of making that case for garden cities, though, and why we feel they are more important now than ever, as part of that project, we produced this short video to try and convince people of our position.
For many people, Garden City means a soulless suburban housing estate, a place dominated by cars and available only to those on high incomes. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Garden City idea is the best chance we have for a healthy, affordable and zero-carbon future. Ebenezer Howard's idea of the Garden City was a vision for fair and sustainable communities. The heart of the idea was a simple desire to create places which enabled people to thrive, surrounded by nature and with access to decent homes, jobs and a vibrant social life. To make this vision a reality, the Garden City will be founded on giving everyone an equal voice in local decisions and promoting a mixed economy in which the core services were run by social enterprises who both cared for the residents and recycled the profits for energy and housing to support high-quality services. The Garden City remains one of the most practical and powerful attempts to work out how we can live in a fairer, healthier and more sustainable way. That's why the Garden City remains so important to our collective future. In an era of climate and cost of living crisis, and where many of our communities fail to support healthy and connected lives, the Garden City idea offers real hope for future generations. We know we can do this through good design that brings nature to our doorstep, and by harnessing new technology to deliver modern zero-carbon living. This isn't some pie-in-the-sky dream. It's a practical way of living better lives through a fairer democracy and a kinder economy.
Great, thank you. Hope we convinced you by that if you weren't already. I think one of the key messages from that, which came up earlier as well, is that, as when Howard was writing, none of these were new ideas. What Howard did is he took these amazing ideas from all these different thinkers and he brought them together in the context of place. And we feel like that's what we're trying to do again today. But for us, there was no point in having a theoretical discussion about garden cities unless it was going to lead to change. So in that spirit of practical idealism, we also worked with a number of organisations to actually understand how we make these ideas a practice in reality. So with Incredible Edible, who've been working across the world in relation to using food as a vehicle for community participation in change, looking at models of citizens' assemblies as ways to encourage public participation in thinking about how we develop places, looking at different models of energy co-op, which I know for many of you are very familiar, but you have to remember England is very far behind when you think about these things. So this is really progressive for England. And we also are working in real places. So for example, we've been working with a group in Belfast, a community organisation who are campaigning to build non-sectarian housing across near what's called the Peace Wall, the dividing line in Belfast, because young people there are fed up of the political division in terms of housing. It's a really inspirational project, and they've committed to the Garden City principles for it, and we'll share the details, because I haven't talked much about specific examples, but that is a really, really fantastic example to explore. And we've also been looking at the original post-war new towns. We've been working for 7 years in Peterlee, which is a new town in the northeast of England. And we've produced with them this prospectus for the future of Peterlee Newtown. What does it mean if you apply some of these foundational principles to the renewal of an existing place today? So I'm going to end it there because I'm sure I'm fully out of time. But I haven't talked. I know we're going to be talking this afternoon and for the rest of today about some fantastic specific examples of the Garden City idea in architecture, in design, and in management. But I hope that I've left you really thinking about what the roots of the idea were about and helping you think that this is about social transformation. Yeah. And as Howard said, the vastness of the task of actually making that a reality is scary. He used to frighten some of his friends, he said. But if it's done with worthy spirit and worthy aims, then it can really provide a positive way forward in the future. So really looking forward to talking to you all later today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great. Thank you.